Revelation. Dun, dun, dun. No angels sang and no bells rang. I'm, kind of shocked. We've come through the trials and the tribulations. We've poured out the bowls and opened the seals and dealt with dragons and all kinds of things. And now here we are with the new heaven and the new earth and the new Jerusalem. Would somebody like to read? I kind of want to start with, since it is Hank's favorite. Would somebody read chapter, let's start with 21.
How much do you want to read?
Finish when you think, when you think it's good.
Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell, and they will be his peoples. And God himself, he will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. For the first things have passed away." I'll stop there for now.
Okay, I think that's a great place to stop. So again, we see John using this, what Dr. Blunt points out is John uses, again, this binary of, we had the whore writing in on the beast, who was who? Rome. And now we have Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. And what does John call the New Jerusalem? How does he describe her? As a bride.
Oh, of course. Right.
So you have this dichotomy being set up between what Rome offers and what God's Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, offers. Rome offers what? Babylon. Seduction. Things that we shouldn't go after. And
diversion away from God.
yes.
I mean,
And what does this New Jerusalem offer?
a marriage with God.
Mm-hmm.
Living with God.
Yeah. A connection with God. And what did we hear in that? What did it say about God in the New Jerusalem?
He would dwell among us.
That he would dwell among us. Where do you remember hearing that? Not in Revelation, but before.
Genesis.
Huh?
Genesis. Garden of Eden.
Yes, Genesis, and where else?
God dwelling with us.
Where else did God dwell with the people?
You're not talking about in the wilderness.
Yes, I am talking about in the wilderness.
Oh,
Because what did they have with them? The Ark of the Covenant. And God dwelled with them. And they basically, in essence, carried God around with them. And what did they build while they were in the wilderness? It was movable, it was mobile, but what did they build?
The temple.
A mobile temple. So wherever they sat down for a little while, they would construct a tabernacle, which is basically a mobile temple, is a tabernacle. Because what is a tabernacle?
place of worship.
a place of worship, typically a tent of worship, not a
Stone building.
not a stone building, not a permanent place. It can move around. I think about like when the disciples of Christ, the denomination, what it came out of was what? A revival. And what probably did they have there? A tent of worship. They would have called that back in Moses's day, a tabernacle. So,
So when you went, where did they build out? I immediately went to the Golden Gap.
right,
But
Well,
you were trying to head me in a different direction. Okay.
I was sheepdogging you in another direction. The tabernacle came first, and then they got angry and did what humans do, which is what?
Started serving earthly possessions.
Uh-huh.
themselves.
And they lost faith. I said, he's been up there too long.
Yep.
Something's gone wrong. We need to
Yes.
worship something.
Yep.
Find something to worship.
And so they created it out of
Their earrings and
rings,
their jewels.
Earthly possessions.
earthly possessions. Connecting that forward with
Rome.
Rome.
And the whore who was all decked out in
Yeah.
all these jewels.
Exactly. So we're seeing,
Are these yours?
yes. Were they in
They're in
the drawer?
the cabinet.
Uh-huh.
I'll be right in. Sorry.
I was putting that's because I needed to put up the laptop that had to update. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind to put that up, thank you, Mary. So that we're seeing John is really pulling, again, kind of like my sermon today, pulling from the past to inform the future. What else do we hear about the New Jerusalem?
No more pain.
No more pain, no more suffering,
No more death.
no more death. Why not?
Because everybody's already in heaven.
The ones that are there have succeeded in avoiding the second death.
Exactly,
The second death is over.
exactly.
So when I ask when repentance over, repentance is over about now.
Right. Yay, you did it. Congratulations. Good repenting. Well done. Here is your new home. Where does it come from?
Out of heaven, or out of heaven. Down from heaven.
Down from heaven.
So it is out of heaven. I thought it was out of the sky. Out of
Yep.
heaven.
Because what is it that we typically think of when we talk about rapture and we talk about revelation? What do we typically picture?
Well, a lot has to happen before we get to the future.
A lot has to happen.
Yes.
But how do we typically picture humanity getting into
Armageddon.
Armageddon? And what else? Where do we go?
Well, the theory is we go up there.
We go up. How many people have you seen? Hopefully none. Because if you have, I'm really wrong and we're in big trouble. How many people have seen the images of what the rapture will look like?
Well, I've seen them caricatures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a Garrison Keeler, I think, who did an episode on rapture, but I think it was during the Bush administration or something earlier than that, and all the people who thought they were going to be raptured were still sitting here,
Mm-hmm.
and these other people were missing. And they were saying, it can't be the rapture because I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, it was a goof on, who's gonna be raptured and who thinks they're gonna be raptured. Which I enjoy, because I think that is nonsense, but that's just me.
Well, but we picture bodies just being yoinked off the earth and taken up somewhere. We, you know, even the Left Behind series, what did they say? That a pilot could be flying a plane and just could be poof, gone because the rapture took them. Everybody else is left behind here on earth and then poof, gone.
So who's flying the plane?
According to this, nobody anymore. Because they got poof, raptured.
Well, so were the people in the plane, and I guess the people who aren't gonna get raptured.
Don't matter, yeah. So compare that kind of concept of rapture and living in the new heaven and new earth with what John says.
I just have a weird question.
Okay.
So if you're living down here and you're at the point where the rapture is actually happening, you're not gonna have to go through death if you're going to be okay. You're just gonna stay here and be okay, and everybody else will come down that had gone before? Is that correct?
According to John, if you are living in the New Jerusalem,
I mean, because heaven's gonna come down to earth, right? So
but
if
you will have already gone through,
we'll have gone through all these terrible plagues and all the stuff, terrible, horrible stuff, and the only people that will remain will be the ones.
and there's always an opportunity, even through all of those horrible plagues and all of the bad things, to do what?
Witness.
Witness. And to do what?
Repent.
Repent. And to do what?
Join, the book of life.
Yes. So, I mean, yes, in essence, like they will, whoever is still here on the earth, when this descends, will see this happen, according to John, in a literal reading of it. John, again, is not being literal, but yes, he is being very symbolic in his, essentially what I hear him saying is that those who witness to Christ, who follow God, are faithful, will create the new heaven and the new earth through their witnessing and through their work and through believing in God and Jesus. That will, if we're not being literal with it, because that will be the people who are left will then create that new living. And the people who are left are those who are faithful. According to John, the people who are left are those who are faithful to Jesus.
Because the second resurrection has gotten rid of the people who are left, who even at the last minute failed to witness and failed to repent. They're gonna
Goodbye,
go in the other direction.
Yeah. into the lake of eternal torment and flame and fire.
I like C.S. Lewis's, the last book in the Narnia series, The Last Battle. And it, you know, at the end, that's what happens. And there is no up and, you
Yeah.
know, all that stuff. They're safe in what they thought was just a shed kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the battle is out there, and they're not real clear about what's going on either. There's none of this, oh, I've been raptured, and stuff. But then in the end, the door opens, and it's God's new world, and they're, you know, and again, it's still not like spelled out in black and white,
Right.
but it I think is a better allegory than Revelations.
I don't, yeah, me either. I don't like poof, they're here, and I don't like poof, they're gone. But, yeah, so that's where our culture has taken. And I think C.S. Lewis really did fall in line with what John is saying with Revelation in his books. His books are way more true to Revelation than Left Behind series ever was. So what does this New Jerusalem look like?
A river runs down the middle.
It does. But what else does it look like? What do we,
According to you, it's got banyan trees along it, or maybe willows. What was the other?
either banyan or, what else did I say? Oh, you see them down in like the Everglades, like
Mangrove.
mangroves.
Okay.
That's how I've always pictured them. Because he says that the tree of life is on either side of the river. And I'm like, how can one tree be on each side of the river? And then I always think of the mangroves because their roots are, and water can go through them. So that's how I've always pictured in my little artistic, artsy-fartsy brain, as a mangrove tree. Because there's multiple roots, multiple things. But then as we've listened out of Maui with the banyan and how they can produce new trunks that come down so that can support the arms of the tree that go out. So I think that could also be how one tree can be on each side of the river.
Were you here when Matthew Sleeth came back to talk about the trees in the Bible?
No, that was right before I got here.
Okay.
His book is still out there.
Matthew Sleeth wrote a book about the trees in the Bible, and I've invited Matthew Sleeth out to Pisgah for 2 or 3 Pisgah Academies or Pisgah Academy lights. But we had one on his book on the trees, and what was fascinating was that Matthew helped me see for the first time that the discussion of plant life in Genesis 1, breaking it down between seed bearing and fruit bearing, or the two, and he said, that this is the same division of plant life that all botany is based on. I mean, it is a biblical distinction that is sufficiently scientifically valid that all of current understanding of plant life is from that, or it's connected to that. And he also spent time talking about the science about trees communicating with each other, and the recognition that trees in a forest talk to each other.
Yep.
That they, underground, there's a network.
Mycelium.
Right. And
Learned that on
a
Star Trek.
tree in a forest is not, one creature. It is a forest.
Yep.
And so that makes it a little easier to understand the tree of life. I mean, it's basically a forest.
Yep.
On both sides of the river. But what was fun or fascinating was to have a medical doctor, validate the science in the Bible on plant life. Anyway, it was, I guess, read the book or we'll invite her back. Okay.
I would love to. I actually I keep meaning to pick up one of the books in there that have been sitting here since he was here and to actually read it, and I just am a horrible reader.
That book is it is so easy to read, especially one afternoon. I mean, it goes really fast. So it's not a scientific article, it's a speech.
Even Harry Potter, I took more time than should be allowed to read. I am a horrendous reader. Horrible. That's why I listen to books on tape now. I'm able to read quicker through it than I am actually doing the reading of it all. But, that's, you all don't need to know that. When we picture the new heaven and the new earth, how do we picture it? What do we typically think of?
Golden streets and clouds and white houses everywhere, everything's clean and pure and,
Okay,
I don't know.
yeah, no, I'm asking, what do you all see?
Pearly gates.
Pearly gates, okay? What else?
Yeah, but pearly
Blue
gates,
skies
Blue skies,
and white puffy cloud.
yeah, yeah. What do you picture, Hank?
well, I don't think they would be pearly gates, because I thought that's how to get into the sky up there. I mean, this is, it's coming
We're just asking, how do we picture what the new heaven and the new earth will look like? So bright blue skies, puffy clouds, white houses and clean everywhere and streets of gold. How else do we picture it?
Lush rainforest.
Lush rainforest,
The Garden of Eden.
the Garden of
Yeah,
Eden.
That would be my next thing.
What about you, Mary?
The streets are gold, but this says street, it doesn't say streets.
Says street,
So,
says
it's just
street.
one
But
street.
it is 1,500 miles.
It is,
Across.
The street.
the city.
My understanding is that, it's 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles. It's a cube
Mm-hmm,
that is, I mean, so it's a pretty big city.
ginormous. Would be the colloquial term
But
for that.
according to the notes, we're not supposed to actually pay attention to that. We're just supposed to say it's a big enough city for all of us to be in there.
To be there together.
That just
Be
seems
different.
phenomenal to me.
Right?
From beginning of time, all the people that have lived on the face of the planet, I can't imagine being in one city.
It's why it's so big.
And a city that size would not be appealing. So it's got to be different from
Our understanding.
reality of
Yeah.
the city.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
can't,
Yeah.
that's so,
But I think
that's more hell than heaven.
what I'm trying,
Yeah.
it is one giant New York City. But in a way, when you read this, that is what John is essentially describing. It is not a Garden of Eden. It is not a rainforest, according to John. It is a really, really, really big city. But if we think about it, what was his reality back then?
Rome was a really big city. I
Rome was a
mean,
really big city,
Wilderness was very dangerous.
very
and
dangerous.
Very lack of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, if you were out there, so.
So if he's trying,
It's kind of swapped from now, well, everybody doesn't, but those of us who don't like big cities, it's kind of swapped.
right,
Yeah.
it is where you found security, where you found food, where you found family, where you found friends, where you found neighborhoods. What else, what else would you find? Huh?
Synagogue,
Synagogue?
well,
It-
or church.
Or whatever, yeah, whichever. What else would you find in a city?
I think a good image is to imagine that if you are a child of a slave in the recently ended Civil War, and the Reconstruction is not going the way it's supposed to go, then what do? You go to Detroit, where everybody else is
Mm-hmm.
in your race, and you build a city in Detroit or in Tulsa,
Mm-hmm.
until the white people destroy it. But you go where you are safe. And so those cities were like Harlem,
Mm-hmm.
they were places of refuge, and opportunity to actually have a life.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't have that life in the South. And so there, a city is a place of refuge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's pretty foreign to me. I mean, I can't, you know, that's not part of my lived experience, but that's because I have as much white privilege as anybody can have, so.
But I think what you said, Jane, and both of you are saying a similar thing of, to us, cities are a place of danger, a place of fear, a place of overpopulation, of noise, not of peace. So for those who live in the country, where we have a lot of space, I lived in New York City. I loved it for about 5.5 years. Well, no, I loved it for about 5 years. And then the last half, I was ready to get out of Dodge. I like going back and visiting because I know my way around and I know how to do it. And can go to the shows that I like to go to and things, but then I get to leave. So I think that's hard for us to imagine, but I will tell you this, when I took my youth group from the church that I worked at up in White Plains, which is actually the church where Pete Jones is now, that's where I did my internship. I took the youth group on a mission trip out to South Dakota. We worked with an agency there that helped go in and work with the Lakota tribe. They're on Pine Ridge. And those kids from that city, when they were out in the midst of God's open sky and plain land, they were like, what is this? What is that? What is that sound I'm hearing? I'm like, crickets. Like literally you're hearing crickets. They're like, how do we make it stop? Like, you don't. And when the storms would literally go rolling across the plains, we're like, is that a tornado? No, it's rolling in the wrong direction. Tornadoes don't roll like this. They roll like, but their world was the city. In the country, especially that open of an area, was terrifying.
So is everybody gonna get their own heaven, their own version of heaven?
Not according to John. I don't know about reality. I don't know. For John, in Revelation, the city was where safety was.
I mean, he talks about walls.
Exactly.
And death is banished. I mean, what is there to need walls for? And you commented they're only 216 feet high.
Yeah.
They're not very high.
They're not very high. For a city as like monumental as it is, their walls are tiny.
But why would you even need them? I mean, you know, if this is God's
Well, that-
kingdom, this is
that brings
on
me to
heaven,
a
you don't
question.
need all that.
It actually says in verse 27, but nothing unclean will enter it. And to me, at that time, I didn't know that there was anything unclean left. With all the moles. Everything.
Well,
Nor anyone who
So,
practices
I
abomination
think that's
before food.
what Dr. Blunt is saying is that's just a reference back to remember all of these vices, all of these things, they're gone. They're gone. Remember, nothing unclean can enter it again.
It's just a reiteration.
It's just a reiteration.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm sitting here going, why do we have to even say that at this moment in time? No,
And
Jerry
so-
Bernie, but.
Is evil still, I mean, other than being banished to this,
Lake of eternal
Lake of-
torment and fire.
yes,
Mhm.
will it
Finish the
be,
sentence. I want to hear
will
your
it be
hand answer.
unleashed again? I mean, can it be unleashed again?
Not
I mean,
according to these verses here. That last battle, that last one where evil was unleashed again into the world, in the hope that it had learned its lesson and wouldn't do that again. No. It has now been banished forever. When the new heaven and the new earth fall to earth, there is no more evil
Okay.
in this new heaven and this new earth, because that has been, God took care of it forever in chapter 19.
Well, we've got, you know, we at least, we know we have 1,000 years to go before we get there. And we haven't even started the first 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So we haven't gotten past the first, and then after the first, we have a 1,000-year wait to that final battle. So, it's.
Not coming anytime soon.
I think we're destined to keep fighting here, keep struggling right here on Earth.
I don't think we want to like sit down and try to chart it out. I knew somebody who did that once.
Oh my.
And, oh yeah, no. And, I mean, it just, he was like another grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
But he sat down one winter and that's what he did all winter long. And he charted it all out, literally. And you just can't. And I also think we just can't know what it's gonna be like because it's beyond our capabilities, our mental capabilities, our
Exactly.
experience capabilities. It's gonna be so much better than anything we can imagine because we're gonna be with God. And that's the whole point. We're with God and it's gonna be more beautiful, more safe, more amazing than anything that we can imagine. And I think John was just trying to like paint the brightest, the best picture imaginable
Yeah.
at that point in time. And if we try to get too literal about it, it's up to God, you know?
But you can't say more safe, you've got to say safe. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
everything from here to there.
Did I say more?
You're
Yes,
trying
you're
to
right.
get more
Yes.
safe, but once
But
we're there,
it's
there- I mean,
completely, there's
it's-
nothing.
There
There's
just
nothing.
is, that,
Just
we've
total
gotten to
peace.
safe.
But I think what Dr. Blunt is saying, why the wall, to go back to that question,
Yeah,
why
that-
the wall? What he is saying is that when you have a people who are as traumatized as anybody who has made it through any of, like, they've made it from the beginning of this whole thing to the end, you are gonna want a wall around you. Because what is your mentality?
Oh, well, it just makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
Just because you know nothing can come.
How many of us lock our doors at night?
Probably all of us.
Yeah.
Turn
For
on
the
the
first
alarm.
half of my life.
Turn on the alarm.
I did not.
Yeah.
But.
But now you do.
I do today.
Does that lock on your door make it so that nobody can get in, ever?
No, but it can warn you or it can make you feel safer. just
Makes you
because-
feel safer. I know, because I lock my doors, I know that somebody who knows how to do it could break down that door. I know they could break a window and get in. I know that I am not completely and totally safe in my house. I know that. However, I also don't want to give them an easy access if they're gonna come in. So I lock my door. It's the same with the wall in Revelation. It is not very tall. People can get over it. Easy. But there's nobody to get over it anymore. But if you have lived through everything that these people have lived through, you're gonna want something there to give you a little security. And so John is providing that. And it's not even these people here. It's the people who he is writing to. Because what else do they have to worry about in that time?
I don't think they have to worry. I mean, if they've made it to that point.
No, like to the time when John is writing this, to the churches he is writing it to. What is the world that they are living in?
Oh, they have Roman swords, you know, they have to worry about being attacked and.
And they also may be wise enough to worry about Rome may fall, and there may be the Goths or the Mongols may be coming,
Yeah.
and as happened, so walls were necessary.
Yes.
I will say that my view of the wall, trying to make as much sense of John as I can, is kind of like walking around see and looking at monuments, and I see the wall as a monument to what God has gotten his people through.
Yeah.
So the wall is not really there for protection, but it is to remind people that this is a place of safety, and we have made it, or.
Yeah.
But but at the risk of monopolizing, one of the things that's bothered me is the two different definitions of peace. That is, I believe I'm an advocate for world peace, but I understand that there's also an argument that world peace is an illusion, and that the only peace that you can actually know and that you should be working for is inner peace. That peace is an individual process, and that world peace is an illusion that only people like Hank believe in. But the concept that this heaven is not actually intended to be a global heaven on earth, but it is a personal heaven on earth. Now, where do you, is there any?
I agree with what Dr. Blunt says, that it is a global heaven on earth. And where we get into that is actually in the wall. Because what's in the wall?
Jewels, I mean, some
Jewels,
pearls,
yeah, so that makes it, that's the richness of it, that's the,
but the names of the 12 tribes and then the apostles' names.
yeah,
Gates.
there are gates. If you wanted to lock the world out, would you put gates in? Who has John been writing to this whole time?
7 churches.
7 churches. What has he mentioned? Has he only written about Asia Minor?
Now, he's mentioned the 4 corners of
He
the earth.
mentions the 4 corners of the earth. So if he's mentioning the 4 corners of the earth, you have a city as big as we have now. You have gates in every wall that are open. What does that tell you?
That people can come and go.
People can come and go. And where can they come from?
The 4 corners of the
The
earth.
4 corners of the earth. This is Dr. Blunt's, and I agree with him. This is a global city, not a. The individual comes in because it is our individual witnessing, our individual loyalty, if you will, to God and to the Lamb that gets us into the city. It is not a. It's an individual as much as it is an individual's works. And I say in my notes, we Reformed folks, especially we Calvinists, really bristle when we start talking about it as our works that get us into the city. But in Revelation, it very much feels like John is saying our works are part of what get us into the city. Here I am qualifying because I follow Calvin and I am a Presbyterian. And I
Well,
I bristle at works, but
I thought you hit your bet pretty well in the air.
mhm,
You sort of, there are 2 ways in.
there's 2 ways.
Okay.
So that's the individual part of it. But the individual is also a part of the corporate. So there's a lot of individuals who have done their work to get into the city, and that's more on a global scale. So to me, it's a both and.
Well, I have rejected the suggestion that individual peace is all that there is
Mm-hmm.
to aspire for. I mean, I've heard it, I've toyed with it, and I've said that can't be right. But it is appealing because it's actually within sight. I can actually see the ability to get individual personal peace.
So let me ask you this. If we each here at this table found personal peace, individual personal peace inside ourselves, what are we gonna do when we go out?
We're gonna be better people.
We're gonna be better people. And if all of us around the world sought to find that individual personal peace, what would happen?
The world would be a better place.
Yes.
So again, we're looking at it can be a both and, we don't have to be an either or. So you keep working on your piece, I'm gonna keep working on my piece, but in the meantime, I'm also gonna keep working for
World
a
peace.
global peace. I'm not just gonna say, okay, I'm just doing it for me, myself, and I've made it, here I am. To me, this isn't peace. Even though I feel good in myself.
The one thing that has been repeated to me over and over, especially in the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
you can only control your behavior, you cannot control the behavior or actions of others. And the only way that I can, you just hope that you've had some kind of positive influence
Mhm.
on the people, but there's always, seems like there's those people who just wanna go out and wreck your day. Just, or wreck your life or whatever.
I feel that about the drivers on Versailles Road all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just like you cannot make some people drive safely. You cannot make other people do, stop doing harm to other people. You cannot,
I think if you, the
it's,
problem with the dilemma you described is the word control. If, to me, the technique is love. So if you love them, you might be able to get them to respond to that love in the right way.
Mhm.
They might love you back, and they might rethink themselves, and they might love themselves, and they might take better care. So it's, the issue is force versus, in me, it's the Aesop's fable, wind and the sun. Who is more powerful?
Mm.
Okay, I read this to Sage. She knows it by heart, so. But the sun is more powerful than the wind. The wind, you know, okay. Now, do you understand, does that help?
well, in a small way it does. I guess because of what we went through with our son,
Mhm.
literally, when you have something like that happen and you have people who are only thinking of themselves and, did something terrible, you feel sympathy and you try to, people who bring bad influences in, and you still try to forgive them or show them a measure of kindness and love. Even though they've taken something horrible from you.
Mhm.
They've taken this thing from you that you can never replace and you're never gonna have back again.
Mhm.
They still go out and they live a life and then they come back to you and want continued forgiveness for you. I have no control over their behavior except for the moment that I have with them. And that's just, it's hard to forgive and let go and find that inner peace that you're looking
Mhm.
for when the world, when you realize your influence is so small. It's not something that I did not have enough impact on anybody's life to make a change to where they're not gonna go and do something to somebody else.
But I think part of it, and this is what John is also saying is that there's a personal responsibility on their side too. What Hank is saying is like, you can try to influence as much as you want, but until they pick that up for themselves. And it's what John is saying even in this, of we have personal responsibility for our actions. We are called to repent, to turn away from what is pulling us away from God, to be responsible to ourselves, which then also would make us responsible to the world. Until they're able to do that, you, Lisa, you can encourage them, you can try, but until they're willing to take that upon themselves. And it's the same thing in here, of how many times in Revelation does God give humanity to turn back? And still at the end of it all, there are people who are unwilling to do that. And God's like, I've almost tried to force you through all of this, and you are still. So there's always a chance, but it's up to them, up to us to make that happen. So going back to what he's saying and what you're talking about, is there is a personal responsibility for our own peace, and our own peace can then influence the peace of others. But we have to be willing to do it. And what it sounds in your case is they're not quite willing to make the change that they need to make.
Yeah, they wanna have both.
Mm-hmm.
They want to come and get love and comfort from me and say that everything's okay, and then they wanna go out and do what they wanna do.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no real healing and there's no real change
Mm-hmm.
on anybody's behalf, because you're sitting there and you're trying to, knowing that they have a real opportunity to change their life, be loving and caring and kind
Mm-hmm.
and do all the things that you should do, and in your mind you're saying, let it go, let me forgive, let me move on from this, and then they go out and they still,
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Yeah.
doing what, in the end, they're just giving into their whims or whatever it is that,
Mm-hmm.
so. I think that's kind of where, I'm thinking, I don't know exactly, but, I've had so many people tell me just, you can only work within a certain framework. And then you can't make somebody be something they don't want to be. And that's probably, I need to work that out too, so.
You can just keep showing them what that looks like, but you can't make them. What are you gonna?
What amazes me is what God can forgive, I've just realized, I've always struggled with this, the 12 apostles were on the sides of the New Jerusalem. But I always struggle with Judas Iscariot. I've always struggled with, the betrayal, the taking of the silver, and then he took his life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've always struggled with that amount of, that what it was, and then he's still on the New Jerusalem.
He's not, because he was not.
I thought he got substituted.
Was it also, he was
But he was
substituted?
the 12 apostles are also not the same as the 12 disciples. So Judas is not on, his name is not on there, because it's not the deposits. Really? Wow. And I'm out. Disciples. So they did choose a new disciple when he
I remember that.
when he left. The apostles are not called that, I think, until Acts. I think. And it includes some of the disciples, but if you go and look up the names, they are not one and the same. So these 12 that are on the New Jerusalem are the 12 apostles.
Gotcha.
So would
Not-
that include Paul?
Yes,
He was
That was
coming?
another, yeah.
yeah,
To
He
come
was
to-
the only one that didn't meet the not self-appointed, but
yeah.
didn't meet Jesus.
So Paul does become
An
an
apostle.
apostle.
Yeah.
And so I guess it has to be in Acts if Paul is one. I'll have to look up where that is, where they actually get named.
Okay, so.
And it may be
I'm a little
either in
confused.
1 or 2,
Okay.
Acts 1 or 2. So yeah, no, Judas is not on there. He basically took himself out
Out.
in more than one way.
But I don't know that that means that God didn't forgive him.
Correct.
You know, because the Bible says, I don't remember where, but somewhere, it's,
It's in the book.
which is always a danger if you can't remember where.
Right.
It is. But I don't think I'm wrong about this. But it says that God can forgive us of every
Yes.
sort of wrong.
Yes.
And that's where the Calvinist part comes in, because
Right.
if you have repented and forgiven, your acts will change. They will
Your
reflect
works will,
that.
yeah.
If you have actually accepted God's grace.
Yeah.
You got God's grace without doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Mm-hmm.
The repenting is just you realizing that you really messed up and accepting God's grace and changing your behavior accordingly. Which is the hard part about saying your personal peace. Because when we say it, we're talking about personal peace in the Lord. We're not, because you can go out there and be the biggest grifter, thief, whatever, and as long as you're getting what you want, you've got personal peace.
Mm-hmm.
You're happy with
But that's
it.
a psychopath.
But well, no, because you're not killing people or whatever. But I mean, just think about somebody who,
Can do wrong without any consequence.
but we're
Any
not even talking about
consequences.
hugely wrong. We're just talking about, so maybe I said that, maybe I overstated that.
Let's
But
say this, the thing that's happening that you see on the news with the malls, people are going in these groups and they're stealing just merchandise. They're not hurting anyone, or they don't think they're hurting anyone. In actuality, they are, but they're not killing anybody and they're not injuring anybody.
And they've got, they may not, deep down, but they may be perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's inner personal peace, and that's not what we mean when we
No.
say that, but we never say that.
Right.
We don't finish the thought. We want personal peace based on faith in Jesus Christ. Not just being happy with your life and happy with yourself and perfectly fine with what you're doing, because what you're doing may be wrong,
And what you've been able to get away with.
and what you've been able to get away with.
It sounded like you were gonna jump.
No, I was just, she was kind of struggling to come up with an example.
That's
Where-
And that was just what
Yeah.
I was.
Where it didn't
thinking. I was
include
thinking, it didn't include hurting, I mean, I haven't ever seen anybody get hurt, but I've seen it on the news a couple of times
Yeah.
where people go into big department stores and they're just, and it's young people, they're going in and they're just taking like clothing and purses and
Mhm.
whatever, and they're just leaving with thousands of dollars worth of merchandise, and nobody arrests them. No, there's no consequences to it,
Well,
so.
we have a concept in our mythology of Robin Hood, who stole from the rich in order to give to the poor. And Robin Hood in our myth is a hero, because he is taking ill-gotten gains from the powerful and feeding the people that are starving.
Mm-hmm.
So, now I'm not quite sure where Jesus fits into that Robin Hood methodology. Arguably, Jesus is in fact preaching, fight the inequality and
I
fight
think he would say, you rich people, you need to give up what you have to give to the poor, not you
Yeah.
poor people go
and
steal
it.
what the rich have
Because
and
that
take
is
back.
one of the 10 Commandments,
Yeah.
thou shalt not
Yeah.
steal. You know,
So I think
it's- you-
Jesus,
You shouldn't.
Yeah. Jesus would want the rich people to realize that they have enough, stop, give away what you will, and to Jesus it would be give it all away, and then turn to God.
But comes a point, I would say, that Martin Luther King probably got to that point, where simply waiting for the powerful to cede power runs out of time, and it becomes necessary for the oppressed.
I think Jesus got to that point.
Right,
But-
and so, you know, and I think Martin Luther King got to that. I think civil disobedience is, I mean, it's peaceful, you know, the third way, it is, it's not fight or flight, it is peaceful resistance.
You know, I think about when Jesus went up on the Temple Mount, and what is one of the famous stories where he lost his temper?
Well, with the money changers in the temple, I mean, he threw them out of the temple. Yeah, but there's the other example of him losing his temper, I guess that was with the woman at the well.
No, that was, you're thinking of,
The woman who had a daughter.
who he called a dog.
Who he called a dog.
He didn't necessarily lose his temper. What I said is he gave into his cultural, place. I know. It was my sermon last week. There are many ways to look at it. Like I said, but I still don't wanna make an excuse for him to,
No, you don't have to.
You know?
There's still varies, yeah.
yeah. But let's get back to Revelation. I wanna look,
We have to finish.
we have to finish. We do. And I think what I have listed in here, like, it just is a lot, I think it's good information. I think it's interesting information. How it ties back in to the Old Testament. John is continuously returning to the Old Testament prophets to pull into what he is saying to his community. It's kind of like what I was talking about today. Go back to your rock. Go back to the things that you know to inform the future. And you will see that with everything about the New Jerusalem. What is the one thing, though, that he does not include, that his ancestors would be shocked and horrified, that was not included in the New Jerusalem?
A temple.
A temple. He does not include a temple in the New Jerusalem. Why do we think he would not include a temple in the New Jerusalem? Because what is it that the Jews are always saying, even still today, that will happen?
God is still coming,
Well, it's written.
The temple will be restored. The temple will be restored. That is what, the temple is the source of their cultural faith. They make pilgrimage to the site where the temple was, even though it is no longer there. They pray where? At least some of them are allowed to pray there.
You mean in the direction of the temple?
No, that's Muslims.
Islam.
In the,
Uh-huh.
are you talking about in the temple?
Where it used to stand, they go to a specific place,
The Wailing Wall?
the Wailing Wall, the western wall of the temple. They put prayers in the stone. That is still very much a cultural aspect of the Jewish faith. It is their bedrock. It is their foundation. So for John to say, as a practicing Jew who believes in Christ, but he is still a Jew, for him to say, to not include a temple in the New Jerusalem, what do we do with that?
I don't know if we would need a temple, because God is gonna be with us.
There it is. There it is. Perfect. Yes.
At least I got something.
God, the temple doesn't need to be there because in their tradition, what is the temple?
Where God is.
Where God is. When you have a city where God is dwelling with the humans, do you need a temple? And what else would we be encouraged to do if we're living in a city with God?
Well, we wouldn't need to witness because everybody believes already.
Yeah, witness goes, that is no longer the answer. What are we able, what are we able to do?
Pray directly to him, right there.
God is there with us in the city. Everything around us is
God.
God, is of God, is from God.
And we don't need a sun and a moon. We don't need torches.
Because why?
Lights. Because God is light.
Because God is light. And is all the light that the city needs. So this picture that John is painting for us is that everything will be renewed and remade upon the foundation of the past. Because it's not, this city doesn't just go plunk and land on earth, right? It go, but how is it?
Poof.
It doesn't poof. It does not poof.
It is rebuilt on it's built on the foundation of the old world. The new world is built from the old world.
And surrounded by it as well. What else, what else kind of goes to that sense of security for folks though? Not just a wall. Is the city sitting right on the ground?
I guess not.
Well,
I mean, the way I'm asking the question,
I don't know the answer, but I'll
Well,
guess that. You're right.
well done, good way to decipher down, deduce. We talked about a little bit, what are the names of the apostles written on?
the foundation.
The foundation. So it sits on 12. The way that Dr. Blunt, and the way I agree, it's a city built on a hill. So that is that Ezekiel? Or Isaiah? So John is bringing that idea of the city built on a hill into the New Jerusalem. And he says you can read it both ways of one foundation is just written on the ground. But I like the way he's talking about it, of 12 foundations. So it's kind of like a stair step hill with the city all the way up. Very big hill. Because that takes into, again, the prophetic tradition of a city built on a hill will what?
I think a candle on a stand.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it. I've said that now. I was really hoping one of you would know it so I didn't have to remember it. I mean, Bush talked about it during, I think it was Bush the second, talked about America is a city built on a hill.
I thought.
And its
that was,
light will,
light to the nations.
a light to the nations. Yeah. And so this city, this new city of Jerusalem is built on a hill. That goes back again to that prophetic tradition. I believe in Isaiah, but I don't think it's Ezekiel. Amos is the river.
What you haven't gotten to the 24, which is the nations
Yes,
will walk by its light, which is analogous to a city on the hill,
mm-hmm.
a light to the nations.
A light to the nations.
And I think that's what you were talking about with, I thought it was Reagan, but.
Was it Reagan?
uh,
Oh, well, it might have been Bush quoting Reagan.
I think so,
He did that a lot.
right.
This is Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden.
Cannot be hidden.
Okay.
Like that bushel basket, kind of. But I'm pretty sure that's another quote that
It's
Jesus
probably-
picks up from the prophets. So we see this city being built on these 12 foundations, this hill, giant hill, and all the names of the apostles are written on that. The names of the 12 tribes are written
On the wall.
on the walls. Gates going in for
Friends.
all the nations to enter into.
Okay.
It has a street of gold, Main Street, down the middle. Doesn't mean that other streets can't come off of it, but that's the main one. What's in that street?
Well, have you moved to 22?
We are jumping everywhere within it. We are all over the place.
Yeah. I don't want to lose the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it.
Yes. Let's go back a little bit and look at the construction.
So repeat it, please. What are you asking?
So there's the street of gold, the streets of gold, street of gold. What else is in the city?
River of life.
River of life. Where does the river come from and where does it go?
Comes from God, his throne.
Through his throne.
His-
Yep.
From heaven.
Flows from his throne.
Flows from his throne, goes down the middle of the city. This again is tied into, and I think it says in here, don't see it right off the bat, but it comes from Ezekiel. Ezekiel's river flows from the temple. Again, there is no temple in the new city, but God's throne is there. And from his throne flows this river of what?
Of the water of life.
Water of life. Where else have we heard about the water of life?
Jesus spoke about it.
Jesus spoke about it when he was giving what?
I'm sorry.
When did Jesus talk about it? Do you remember?
These are the woman at the well.
When he was with the woman at the well. Where else do we hear about water of life? Springing from somewhere.
In
Goshen, or
here, in
In the Bible.
talking about like, well up like water, that verse, my.
No. No, where else?
Comes spring
Where else does water,
You're talking about Genesis.
well, I mean, Genesis always, but, where else do we deal with water coming out of a rock?
Oh.
when Abraham.
Moses.
Moses.
It's a rock.
Moses said,
Yeah.
right.
Yes! Woohoo! Yay!
We've also had water bubbling up in Revelations.
We have had water bubbling up.
And
Which-
gushing and cleaning.
Yes, which also goes back to Moses. This rock so this water comes out of the rock. In Revelation, the water comes out of the throne of God, which is the rock. which we are built upon, yada, 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 yada. It is all, I keep doing this because so that we can see this linkage between the end of the book and the beginning of the book and how it is all the way through. It actually is a great ending for the Bible because it kind of pulls it all together in a very neat little bow. There was a lot of things to get to that neat little bow. It's like me fighting with the wrapping paper when I'm wrapping a present. It goes to hell in a handbasket real quick. But it ends with a nice little bow. So the river flows down the middle with the water of life. We've talked about the trees. What more about the trees? We've talked about how the mycelium network of their roots probably is how that one seed from the tree of life in where, Hank?
I'm sorry,
The seed from the tree of life from where?
the seed is from,
Seed, S-E-E-D, of the tree of life comes from where? You've been answering it the whole time.
you mean from witnessing?
Genesis.
That's what I thought. I'm with you.
Genesis was your answer today the whole time.
That was months of spent.
It's been witnessing. Forget witnessing now.
I've been talking about Genesis. She's asking me, and I said, well, it must be witnessing.
So the tree of life in Genesis.
Is right before the tree of knowledge of good and evil,
Correct.
and I think right after the first commandment, to tend and care for my garden, or, they're beside each other.
Yeah.
So, but there is one tree,
One tree.
and in the Garden of Eden.
Right. And so this
it's basically
tree-
one sentence, they
Yeah.
don't really elaborate, they move to the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
So this tree of life, who was in Eden, is now on each side of the river, and maybe like I said, I always picture it as like a mangrove because it's
Kind of web.
kind
Their
of that
root
web
system is-
root system, but it could be like a mycelium network where it all connects and then produces more on each side of the river. So it all comes from one tree, but probably multiple one trees up through there. And what does the tree produce?
Food
12 kinds of fruits.
for 12 months.
Is it one fruit a month or 12 fruits in 1 month?
I think it's 1 a month.
One a month.
It's 1 a month.
Why is that significant?
For me, the significance is the tree of life meets your entire needs all year long. So you don't have any hunger
Mm-hmm.
because the tree of life takes care of hunger.
What about the number 12?
Understand?
That
Also
goes
the
back to
magic
12
number.
tribes.
It's a sign of completion, just like the 144 cubits of the wall. What is 144?
12 times 12.
12 times 12. Boom. John loves the number 12, or multiples of it. What else does a tree have?
Leaves.
What do these leaves do?
Heal the nation.
Heal the nations. Thought the nations were gone.
Well, I thought that, I keep reading, and they're still fornicators and murderers and adulterers. They're still there.
No, and 24, the nations will walk in the light. So, I mean, yes, the nations are still there, the kings are still there.
But they're different kings,
They're
right?
different.
But they're
kings.
different kings. How are they different?
They're better.
They're better. How are they better?
Well, they're obviously close to God.
Mm-hmm.
You've gotten in.
So, what was the part that you were wanting to look at, Hank? The kings bring what?
Well, you said they're still talking about nations, and right in 24, the nations will walk in its past light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. So kings and nations are still around
Mm-hmm.
in this new Jerusalem.
Yep.
And they're walking through the gates.
When it says they will bring their glory into it, what do we think that is? I'm looking for where I've wrote about that. Okay, here it is. So what does it say? The kings of the nations will what?
Your notes say, these kings will no longer hoard their wealth or misappropriate their resources for themselves. They will allow it to become part of the city.
Yep. So we've gotten rid of the kings and the nations who just were not gonna ever change their ways. And we are left with what?
Good kings.
Good kings. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen. So they bring their wealth in, and it's kind of what we were talking about before. They're doing the Robin Hood, except the right way. They're not stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. They are the rich who are willing to bring their wealth into the city and give it over for the good of the city. Okay? Where else do we need to go? Most people, when they think about Revelation, they end here with the description of the city and the new heaven and the new earth, and it's like, we're done, happy. Woohoo. Does it end there? Where does it go?
To an epilogue and a benediction.
Correct. And multiple people have things to say in this epilogue and benediction. And basically what the epilogue and benediction do is certify that what is said is what?
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy and
Holy.
or true. It is trustworthy and true. These things that John has, that I have written, and God has said are trustworthy and true. You can believe it, because here are all the reasons that you can believe this. Which in my world, that is usually thou dost protest too much a little bit. Because when you have kids, if they get in trouble, what do? Typically?
They lie.
They
Say dogs.
But trust me, I didn't do it. I promise, I didn't do it. Trust me, you can trust me. Most of the time you're like, Even adults these days, you can trust me. You know me, you can trust me, I promise. But in this part of it, the angel,
Mhm.
John, and even God come and say, this entire thing is trustworthy and true. You can count on it coming true.
And don't dare take anything out of it,
Or add anything to it.
or the plagues will visit you. Or if you add anything to it, what happens then?
Written off the book.
Written out of the book of life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that was probably more, and Blunt kind of believes this too. That was John, and it's a traditional thing. When you have written something and you send it out with other people, what don't you want them to do?
Change it.
Yeah, you don't want it to change it like Wikipedia, you can go in
Yeah,
there
exactly.
and
Exactly.
make your own thing.
So if you end with that benediction, what do you hope?
That people are gonna take it at face value.
Mhm. And that the people that you send it with are not going to do what?
Cut and paste.
Cut and paste, yeah. Exactly.
I thought it was interesting that he started that benediction with, he tried to worship the angel,
Yes.
and the angel said, do not worship
Yo, yo,
me.
whoa.
Stop now.
Yeah.
And
I'm here with you.
yes, I'm here with you, and I'm the same as you.
Exactly.
Back up and punt. So I thought.
Turn around.
Turn
I
around,
have-
this ain't where you're going.
One small question, and then I
Okay.
wanna keep my mouth shut, and it's only because I'm behind.
It's okay.
In this last, it kinda sounds like God's City is not really different, a whole lot different, that we're still gonna have like the same system, like the Kings come in. I mean, I know it's different, but it's kinda like there's still gonna be people who are gonna be dependent on the Kings and not just.
No, we're all gonna be even. So the kings are just coming in, but they're coming in
With
as
stuff.
part of the city, not ruling over.
I
The
kind of
city.
look as though relinquishing everything over to God.
Correct.
So we all relinquish everything to Him so that we're all the same.
Yeah.
And we all enjoy this, what He has created, His creation and the goodness.
Okay, that's kind of what I didn't.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like, it doesn't sound like everybody is gonna be in the city, that all the four corners of the earth are gonna either have to make their way to the city or,
Well, the city is ginormous, so it's kind of in essence covering
the
the four corners of the earth.
Okay,
And again, we're talking symbolically. You know, it is symbolic of is again numerology, using the 12s, using the 144, using the, that's why Dr. Blunt doesn't, little words, transfer it into miles when he translates this text. He keeps using
it's more or less
Stadia.
symbolic.
stadia. I want to say strata, stadia, because that's where that number, if you'll look in my notes, that's where that number actually continues with that theme, that 12 theme. But if you do it into miles, you lose that.
I believe that the kings and the nations, once they walk into the New Jerusalem, frankly disappear
Mm-hmm.
as kings and nations. And I think John is saying that the nation state will no longer be the nation state, and
Yeah.
kings will no longer be kings.
Yeah, cause I was thinking, with heaven, God is kinda it.
Yeah,
And there is no other hierarchy or, it is just what it is, and we all report to one person,
Mm-hmm.
so.
And you see
Or one
Jesus,
entity.
yeah, you see Jesus take on the names that he kind of refused in a way to take on in his earthly life. You see him taking on the I am the Alpha and the Omega.
Oh, yes.
I am the beginning and the end. You see him taking those titles, even though we know he has always been those things, we see him claiming those things for himself at the end of the book. And he's confirming what we've always known to be true. He is just saying it out loud or writing it bold and in red.
are we done?
Are we done? Are we done?
Well done.
Thank you, Hannah.
I am sorry it took so long for us.
There's a lot to it.
And there's even, I mean, we have I have just scratched the surface with you all about this. It tickles my fancy when you just start like digging into the layers of it and how it connects back and the symbolism of it all. And it's probably why I love reading Dan Brown books, because he did a lot, he did a lot with symbolism. I was like, ooh, let me look at that. But I think there's a lot to learn from it when we're not afraid of it.
Well, you have improved my perception of Revelation.
Yes.
So
Yes,
if that was your ambition, one of your ambitions you've accomplished.
I have succeeded in what I wanted to do.
Mine as well. I think the first time I came in here, it closed everything off, and you were going to film me, you're like, well, we're diving into Revelation. I was like, no, I'm not good.
And I am slowly backing out. I'm glad you stuck around.
Yeah, I do. I love it.
I'm gonna send, I'm gonna send you a couple of emails that I have received, and I joined a listserv, and he has also looked at Revelation in a very similar ways, so I will forward those on to you. There's gonna be 3 of them, and I wanted to wait until we were done, so that if you had any questions, you couldn't ask me, because I'm gonna be upstairs next week.
Do we have a plan for next week?
Nope, I think we're gonna,
Stevie would like to know what we're planning on doing.
Yeah. I think next week will be you all figuring out what you're gonna do, cause for the next, until
Do you know
November.
whether Lisa Johnson plans to attend? I thought she had.
She would like to do something like what we do on Thursday evenings at Theology on Tap with the discussion questions. That she has a whole list of them that we have used at Theology on Tap. And just to get like some discussion started, so it's not so much a Bible study, which we have been doing how many months of Bible study, so it might be good to make a change in that. I'm sorry it took so long.
Oh, no, I don't apologize. I mean,
That's what we asked for.
And people just kind of started drifting off as things went. But I think it would be good to come with some ideas next Sunday to think about what you want to do. Probably would be good to do something not so much of a Bible study, and to get into some more like, I want to say modern day topics, but you know what I mean when I say that. Cultural kind of things, discussion topics. But I don't have an idea, because I am going to be teaching teenagers about how to be a Presbyterian. Wish me luck. I will ask, simply because somebody, I cannot remember who, mentioned this, of it might be good to have an adult kind of confirmation class. Like, not so much that we would be confirmed again, but to kind of have this is what it means to be Presbyterian class, and this is why we do the things we do, and how we do them, and where we came from, and everything like that. Would that be something that would be interesting to folks? And think about that, bring that up next week with the other folks who are here, because I have something that we could definitely do that with in a month. I promise.
How long is confirmation class? Is it just a month?
No, it goes to November,
Okay,
but I would do the adult one in a much, much, much shorter, compressed. It would be like, basically I have a whole thing of like, why do Presbyterians do the things they do? And it kind of explains that and how.
So what is happening with the family class?
They are reading a book of, I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember? If I can bring up hold on.
Did this come from Lucy or from some of the?
I think Mary brought it. See here, Lucy, look up her email for a session the other day. You know, Mission report. They are going to, and it's no longer a family class. They're changing their name and focus and will begin the school year reading God Will Help You by Max Lucado. So that's the book that they will be reading.
Do you know anything about God Will Help You?
No, because actually, I was trying to remember the meeting, and we certainly talked about it a lot, but I don't think they had, I think they left them to go talk to all the people involved in that, who've been involved in that class.
That's what they did last
Choose
week.
a book, because that, by the time of our last CE meeting, I don't think they had.
I think they chose that last week when, that's why we couldn't have Sunday school last week. Cause,
No, they didn't, we didn't do it at that meeting. They didn't come, but it doesn't matter. I think they continued that conversation after the meeting. and-
maybe, there was just a group sitting out under the tree over here that made that
was
choice.
a meeting. Oh, okay, that was a different.
That was, yeah, that was last week, that was, but yeah, so it's a Max Lucado book that they are doing. And they're changing the name of it to make it more, you don't have to have a family, you don't have to have kids to be a part of it. So
So do you know the Max Lucado book?
I do not know it well, I would
That's probably one of his newer ones, isn't it?
probably,
Because I've read some of Max Lucado's books
Mhm.
and it, you know,
Mary really likes it. I think she's the one that suggested it. I haven't read it, I didn't, and I wasn't in the discussion with them. So that's what they are reading. You all can on, like I said, on Sunday, you can decide if you wanna go with Lisa's idea, if you all wanna join forces with them again. We tried that once and it went okay. What'd you say?
Yeah, for a while.
For a while.
Um,
And then they decided they wanted to go off again and cause they wanna read books.
Well, they
Well-
were interested in technology with
Yeah.
teams, they kind of got off on more of the technology. I think we were there for some of it. and then
it was
Trace, they,
how to handle youth access to technology.
Yeah.
and then
And, that was a compelling
they kind of
topic
segue
for
from there.
people with youth. It has less interest for me. So can we say goodbye, Ben and Jennifer?
Oh, no.
Did you
Should push